Commission will begin the meeting by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February 3, 2025 meeting. The minutes were distributed previously to the commissioners. Do any of the commissioners have any changes to the minutes? Okay. Can I have a motion?
Moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous?
Two abstaining.
Two abstentions by Nat and Dow.
Yep.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a consideration of the sewage facilities planning module for Nature's Vin Wine Bar at 193-195 East Lancaster Avenue. According to the review letter, the applicant prepared the sewage facilities planning module to be submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. The applicant is proposing to change in use from a floral retail store to a proposed wine bar and retail shop. As noted in the letter, component 4A must be completed by the Township Planning Commission prior to the module being adopted by a resolution at the Board of Commissioners meeting. Does staff have any comment?
No, you covered it all. It just needs your signature.
Okay. And Mr. Solicitor, do we need to vote on this?
Yes, you need to be authorized to sign it.
Okay. Do I have a motion? All right, so let me ask first. Do any of the commissioners have any comments? Okay. Do any members of the public have any comments? Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is unanimous. And I will execute the document and provide it to the township engineer. Next item on the agenda is a consideration of zoning board application appeal 3205 for 201 Spring Mill Road. Here, the applicant seeks a variance from Section 280-112D of the zoning code's steep slope regulations in order to remove a soil stockpile from the premises in order to construct a single-family residence. Applicant also seeks a special exemption under Section 280-112N2 to install sanitary sewers in the steep slope area. In the alternative, applicant seeks a variance or other relief as required under zoning code consistent with the exhibits and testimony. Is there a representative for the applicant?
Yes, Nick Keneally representing the applicant. And as you stated, the reason this is here is a two-lot subdivision right here on South Spring Mill Road that you see. Since the two-lot subdivision, even though it's a steep slope issue, a zoning issue, it has to come here for your recommendation to the zoning hearing board. In this instance, it calls for removal of certain areas of steep slope. One area is a stockpile that was created as a result of removal of other steep slope. There was a permit granted for the removal of this steep slope. On that permit, it did not indicate the location of the stockpile. As you see here, we have a photograph that's marked as an exhibit for the zoning packet that shows the stockpile. The stockpile is located in this area right here. Also, there are steep slopes in the area back here in the rear of the lot, of the two lots where it would be, and there's a request for the special exception to run a sewer line down here, since you'll see in the next plan that the sewer line is located in this area. Again, a couple more pictures. One, again, a picture showing the stockpile, and then a photo showing the other area of steep slope down in this area. There's a third area of steep slope located right here. Now, when you turn to the permit plan, or the subdivision plans, you see two homes. There's the area that the sewer line is down here. You see a connection on the line coming down to the sewer line here, running through the steep slope. It's just basically a trench that is being disturbed and dug for the sewer line. Also, the sewer line running down here to this area, connecting the lateral down here. The stockpile's right here that you saw the picture of, and there's a real small area outlined in black here of steep slope that also would be removed as a result of the construction of this home and some grading that would occur as a result of this home. This area is about, I believe, 323 square feet here. As I said, this is a stockpile that was created as a result of removal of other steep slope, and then the lines coming down through this steep slope. There are the areas of disturbance of the steep slope. In this instance, it's relatively minor. There is a list in the zoning code that determines what is trying to be preserved by not disturbing steep slope. This complies with that list. As I mentioned, we're asking for special exception for the sewer line and then for variances for the stockpile and the small area of steep slope in this area.
So let me just ask, is it accurate that the soil stockpile, that's man-made?
That is man-made, clearly man-made.
But the other,
We don't know, yeah, we couldn't determine if this area here is man-made, and this area obviously is not man-made because the slope that goes all the way across. But again, for that type of relief in the zoning code, you only need a special exception since basically you're not disturbing much of the steep slope. You're just digging a trench so you can install the sewer lateral down to the other line.
okay.
Mr. Cornelia, the larger steep slope area, the man-made, let me reverse that. The soil stockpile.
Right.
How do we know it's man-made?
Because it was the applicant could testify or the engineer could testify that's where there was steep slope removed from another area. I believe is it on?
So there's
the
a
site?
time and date?
Oh,
or-
it's recent, very recent. It's within the last year or two, I believe.
Okay, got
And
it.
then the reason why we had to come back in was it was not indicated on that plan that this soil stockpile would be placed over here.
Okay,
So
I
that's
understand.
why Kevin said we had to come back in and ask for relief. on it.
Okay, thank you. To clarify, the eastwardly steep slope area, the one that I guess would interfere with that home site, is your contention that's man-made as well?
We don't know if that's man-made or not, so we're not contending that it is because we couldn't determine whether it's man-made. There's only a small area of steep slope in this area, but we don't know how it got there.
Okay, so if this variance was granted, how many cubic feet of steep slope are you disturbing?
In this area here,
Correct.
I believe it was 323. It's indicated on the plan, 323.
Okay. With respect to the disturbance due to a sewer lateral, is there an alternative where you're not going through
Now,
as steep of a
I'll-
slope?
I'll defer to the engineer, but the line is down here, the easement for the line. It's already in there. It's already existing. So the only way really to get to it would be coming down this area here. And as I said, I believe it's a small trench. I don't know how many feet. Probably a 2-foot wide trench.
Okay, so in the alternative, let's say we said, can you disturb less? Or can you disturb a flatter slope? Would
Yeah.
it make a difference?
Yeah, no, it would not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners have comments, questions? Okay. Does staff have comments? No. Okay. Any members of the public have any comments? Can you please come up? And if you would, please state your name and address.
Thank you. My name's Edward Scott. I live at 221 South Spring Mill, down the hill on the same side of the road. Lived there with my wife and 2 children for the last 10 years. Like to share some concerns we have with the subdivision in general, if I could. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Norsini from the Township for his responsiveness, clarity, and guidance to the several issues we and our neighbors have been experiencing that we shared with him. And also for sharing our written concerns about this proposed subdivision with the commission chairs a few weeks ago. We also remain grateful for the support of our ward commissioner, Mr. Jim Riley, as well. For the record, the concerns that I referenced persist if additional impervious space surfaces proposed herein increase stormwater and/or street water runoff and subsequent flooding that we've experienced down the street via both road and the stream that runs across the back of the properties. There are no sewage drain grates between the high part of the hill where 201 exists and the low part of the road where the stream runs under the road. And there is a large acreage of stormwater that drains through our properties from higher elevations. That primary concern, along with the street or cartway being too narrow currently for safe passage of children to buses, walkers, cars passing each other, is complicated and exacerbated by construction vehicles. Parking on the street is really not feasible. So those 2 primary reasons, in addition to the written comments that we provided to Mr. Norsini and he provided, are the reasons that we ask that the subdivision be denied. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just address that public comment briefly? Sir? Hi, my name is Peter Nelson. I'm the solicitor for the township. I just want to clarify, this is absolutely the first step in this process. So they need to get this variance before they even can apply for land, subdivision. So, this is a recommendation just on whether or not to remove the steep slopes. It has nothing to do with the subdivision. Once this recommendation is made, they're going to go to the zoning hearing board for this variance. Then they'll have to come back here for the land development. And to be honest, all the issues you raised now should be raised then, because that's really, those issues are all land development issues. They're not issues on whether or not they can remove this particular pile of soil. Yeah. I mean, it's good that you came. We appreciate your participation, but I don't want you to be disappointed with a vote tonight and thinking, oh, I'm done. You've just started also. So make sure you come back when they actually review the subdivision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Had 2 questions for you, Mr. Cornelia. So, first question, and this is now going to be with regard to the steep slope that is on the east side of the house. First, if it is not man-made, what's the standard that you're going to need to meet?
We would need a variance standard, and there would be the standard of a hardship, and there is a number of items in the steep slope ordinance that addresses why there are slope controls in Radnor Township. In 280-112, It talks about to limit erosion and sedimentation, to protect watersheds and limit increases in stormwater runoff, prevent an increase in the possibilities of landslides, maintain adequate foliage cover on hillsides, and protect streams from increases in sedimentation and pollution. None of those are affected by this removal of this small area of steep slope on the east side of the building. So that would probably be the argument before the zoning hearing board, that there is no harm being caused by the removal of this, and that it really does comply with the intent of the ordinance as to the steep slope regulations.
Okay. And the second question, is there any modification alternative for this design that would allow you to avoid doing that?
Yeah.
To move the house over or to?
Yeah, that I don't know. I know, obviously, on the one area where the stockpile is pretty much smack in the middle. On the other area, at least looking at it, there may be an area where you can move it over and comply with it, but normally, even when you're grading it out, it's probably going to hit the steep slope area on the east side there. And it's a very small area that we're talking about. Again, there's no other surrounding area there that shows steep slope, but again, we can't say it's man-made because we really don't know, and we don't know if there's any permits, that address that. It's just kind of odd that it's an isolated area in that area. I could see it down here because obviously there's a ridge down here, but in that area, it doesn't appear to really be anything natural that would have resulted from it.
Mr. Cornelia, what's the existing, what's the proposed footprint of, I guess, the home in parcel B?
Do we know that?
The one that's impacting the eastwardly slope?
We have building
steep slope.
coverage. We just have the
Yeah,
3140.
31,
3140.
okay, so it's conceivable that this could be maybe a 6,000 square foot home?
If it's going to be 2 stories, 2 full stories, conceivable, yes.
Okay. If you were not going to impact that eastwardly steep slope, what, have you done a calculation of what the
I
home
have
could
not.
conceivably be?
I can put a rule on it and see what. But you got it. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike Rakosny from Site Engineering Concepts. The disturbance of this slope is more driven by the grading of the site, less from the house footprint. So even if you reduce the size of the house footprint, you'd still have to grade in this east side to be able to meet the finished floor elevation.
Okay, got it. So, so you're still looking at some sort of grading, right?
Yes, so there's contours and a boulder wall shown here for the grading.
And if you would avoid that entirely, is there no home, or no matter what you do, you have to grade? Is that what you're saying?
We would have to grade, so there's also a swale in this area that's directing the stormwater runoff, or diverting the stormwater runoff from the house. So it would have to be some sort of divergence on that side of the property.
Okay. I guess I'm going to ask the same question, maybe differently, maybe not, but if there's no structure on Lot 2 or Lot B, there's no grading. But if there is one, there is grading, you're saying?
Yes.
That will disturb the steep
Yes.
slope? Okay. Got it.
Sliding that house back and avoid that area?
We'd be limited by the property setbacks, sliding the house back.
For which you would also need a variance, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If we slid the house back, we would need a variance for the setbacks.
Okay, got it. Is there a point to where you can slide the house back to, variance or no variance, that you would avoid the steep slope issue?
I don't believe so. So the 2 rear corners are touching both of the setbacks on this side, so we couldn't slide it back any further.
So I'm not so concerned with the setback because you're going for a variance regardless. These are some of the questions I think the zoning hearing board will probably ask you. Is there a way to, avoid the steep slope? Because that's probably a bigger issue than setback.
We would also not be able to shift the house forward because we are at the max driveway grade. So shifting the house any further forward would make that driveway too steep.
Okay.
But is this the final configuration of the house?
I would have to defer to the client for that, but I believe so.
Or is it just a diagram?
I believe this is the final configuration, or the intended final configuration.
Okay. But the configuration could change, correct?
Conceivably, I guess.
Pardon?
I
I mean, they're clearly mirror images of each other, so what's appropriate for one site might not be appropriate for the other, so
Yes, I'll have
it's a
to
matter of design at this point,
defer
isn't
to the
it?
client for that.
I think that's what MJ's point is. It's a matter of the design of the house, but
If you flip this house, you would have the driveway on the side, and you would still need the grading on this side of the property. So flipping the,
Oh, yeah, I understand if you keep those dimensions.
I don't want to pretend that this is a dress rehearsal for zoning hearing board, but, I think they're gonna want to see that you've tried. Maybe you can't eliminate the steep slopes, the steep slope intrusion, but, maybe you can do less. Have you experimented with?
Well, clearly, that's going to be preparation on our part.
Sure, I get it.
And I appreciate the comments because obviously we're going to have to address that.
And that's what gives me a little bit of pause, but.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions by the commission?
Yeah, I feel like if the footprints of these two homes were just slightly smaller, we would not be having any of these issues.
Yeah, I mean,
I
It
agree with
appears
you.
that
I
it
think
may,
they could
yeah.
easily thin out and get all the square footage you need, and also you could, it would be, if you did follow the slopes, it might give you a little different building on one site than the other, which might add to the variety of the neighborhood rather than having two identical homes.
yeah, I mean, this area, we're only talking, this is 3 feet in slope and 300 square feet, so it's a fairly small area.
but you're saying that it would have to be graded even if we pushed it in, say, another 10 feet,
We would still be grading in this side yard.
or even, say, you put, I don't know what kind of width that would leave you. But even if you pushed it in 20 feet, would you still be grading in that side yard area there?
For stormwater convergence, we would be grading in that side regardless.
Well, I think what Commissioner Varenhorst was suggesting was it may not even be a bad idea not to have like the mirror image of the two identical houses like that. I mean, if it wasn't just an issue of pushing it 10 feet one way or the other, it would give you more flexibility.
You could theoretically also change the lot sizes. You're not at the lot size minimums. There's other things you can do. I mean,
I think we're close to lot widths, though. We may be,
Yeah, the minimum lot width is 100 feet. We're at 108 feet for each lot.
right, yeah. It seems to me, and yeah, asking a question here. It seems to me like there's a little bit more work to be done here. To me personally, speaking only for myself, I think that larger steep slope area, it's clearly man-made. I think you'll meet that burden with us and certainly with zoning hearing board. What concerns me is that undetermined slope, smaller steep slope area to the right. And I think, I'm somewhat persuaded by your argument that you're going to have to disturb some. But given the footprint of the homes themselves, as well as the lots, I think there could be more to do here. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no.
To clarify, the area outlined for the steep slope disturbance there, that's just because that's the sliver of steep slope, but you're putting that boulder wall over toward the property line and leveling that whole side, right? Not just the...
Correct. So that boulder wall, we don't have enough room to grade in the required
Right.
3-to-1 maximum. I'd also like to point out, even if we shifted the house over, based off of the location of the steep slopes, with construction vehicle traffic, movement of materials, that slope would be disturbed regardless. So even if we were to put something around it with construction vehicle traffic, it would be disturbing those slopes.
I would argue you could figure out different construction vehicles to make that work.
We could consider that.
Have people hand carry the stuff in instead of I don't feel that that's a good argument. Yeah, if I bring in a 70,000-pound truck, it's going to screw stuff. Oh, bring in 32,000-pound trucks and you'll be good.
There you go.
I have a question for the solicitor. So the applicant has three things that they're asking for. They're asking for our opinion on the special exception with the sewer laterals. They're asking for our opinion for zoning hearing board on that center steep slope area. And they're also asking for our opinion on the, I guess, the one to the right, the smaller area. If we were to take a vote, how would you like us to serve that up? Can we do three on each one, or?
You can do a recommendation covering all three. You can do a recommendation saying, well, we recommend these two, but we don't recommend a third. You could do a recommendation saying, we recommend these two and recommend denial of the third.
Okay.
As far as making the motion, you could make a motion that covered all three, or if you thought you're going to have some dissent, do a motion on each one of the requests, and then the recommendation would combine the three motions together.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And I'm less bothered by the steep slope. I'm more bothered by the application of this footprint to a site that it doesn't fit. And we've been through that before on other projects, and it is actually kind of upsetting from this side to think, hey, your architect could use a little more imagination at dealing with that problem, and actually probably result in a much more interesting building and structure, and instead of just taking this footprint, duplicating it, and going, it doesn't work. And the other, I'm the soil pile. Yeah, I support getting rid of the soil pile. It's kind of, thanks for sharing the photos. A little odd, and I would support going through the steep slopes to get the sewer in. You're going to put the sewer in, and you're going to put the steep slope back the way it was, and that's kind of an easy one. So, but my comments are more related to the design aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think, so what what I'm hoping to do is not imperil your project in its entirety. Obviously, there's some view that the soil pile is man-made, right? I think you could prove that out. And I think, you do need a sewer lateral, and it's minimal.
It's either that or a really big groundhog.
Right, but I don't think it serves you to just have one vote on the entire project. I think you,
I would agree.
okay, great.
Okay, so you want us to proceed with a vote?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And we'll decide how to
Okay.
proceed in the future, whether we go straight to zoning, come back, or whatever. Yep.
Okay. So can I have a motion?
Sure. So on the matter of 201 Spring Mill Road, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to zoning hearing board to approve the special exception on sewer laterals for the two sites. Also approve the intrusion of on steep slopes for the soil stockpile, and recommend denial for the intrusion of the steep slope to the east part of the plan.
Okay.
I
Do I-
second that.
Okay, second by Varenhorst. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous? With one abstention by Kunda. All in favor with one exception by Kunda. Okay,
Thank you for your time and comments.
thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of application 213836 for final land development at 60 West Avenue. This application pertains to the land that is currently a parking lot between the AT&T building and Lancaster Avenue. The applicant's proposing to construct a mixed-use building and related improvements on the lot within the township's Wayne Business Overlay District. Development consists of 45 residential condominium units, ground floor retail commercial space, and 111 parking spaces, 99 of which will be located in a partial below-grade parking structure. As part of our consideration, we've received review letters from Gannett Fleming and Gilmore Associates, both dated February 21, 2025. And we have a representative for the applicant. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, just so I go on record, my firm's the architect for this project, so I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, so that's a recusal by Varenhorst?
Yeah.
And I have the conflict with site because I employ them, so I have to abstain.
And then a second recusal by Commissioner Kunda.
They're dropping like flies.
Sure are.
So hurry and make the presentation.
Do we still have a quorum? We do.
So, well, thank you all for hearing us tonight. David Falcone on behalf of the applicant. You are all very familiar with this project. Commissioner Vines did a good job outlining what we're seeking tonight. We did submit some updated plans following the last time we were in front of you all, but more importantly, we had an opportunity to meet with staff and discuss the parking lot to the rear of the project, which was kind of the primary open item the last time that we were in front of the Planning Commission. We are aware that there are still a number of cleanup items on these letters that need to be addressed. We intend to do that there. We'll comply. I will certainly turn it over to our engineer. So we understand that by coming to you this evening and asking you to make a recommendation, that we are doing so with thick letters that need cleanup. But what I'm asking is for consideration on the types of comments that are in the letters. They are really non-substantive primarily, and cleanup items that we should just have been better about in our last submission. So I just want you to know that we do understand that, and we appreciate that you're considering us tonight. I will also note that there is one outstanding item that we have been continuing to work with staff, and Mr. Norsini in particular, which is the pedestrian impact study the draft of that, or that the report was actually submitted this afternoon to the township. So we know that that is an item that was kind of a we'll continue to work with the township on, but that has been submitted. The township has been great to work with us in providing some data that they had for some of their parking kiosks that helped us with that study. We utilized that, prepared the report, and submitted it. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob Lambert, and he will speak specifically to the review letters. And if there's anything else that comes up, we're all here, obviously, to answer. But again, thank you for taking the time to hear us.
I'm going to give a quick summary, Rob Lambert. So one of the questions that was asked earlier of me was the waivers, just to clarify what waivers. So when we did preliminary plan, we were granted 6 different waivers. One was kind of and I'm happy to read the ordinance sections, but I'll kind of summarize them. One was the standard waiver of features within 500 feet that you typically see on projects. The second waiver had to do with the reservation and dedication of additional right-of-way. The third waiver was to permit one-way traffic with perpendicular parking. And so that was in the West Avenue parking lot. Providing perpendicular parking on one-way aisles is prohibited. It actually gained a lot more spaces to be able to do that. So we added, that was a waiver that was granted. We had a waiver to meet lighting standards as shown on the plans. Again, that was really related to the West Avenue parking lot. And in addition, the next one was to permit the landscaping as shown on the plans. Again, that was the West Avenue parking lot. There were some unusual circumstances we worked with there. And then the last waiver was related to the park and rec fee. We are seeking one additional waiver, and I'm not sure when we went through preliminary plan, whether it was decided I couldn't remember, and I was talking to Dave, and we couldn't remember if it was decided we didn't need it or if we needed the waiver. And the waiver would be to request to be able to provide more than 5 parking spaces in a row without an intervening landscape island. And by providing that waiver, we gain a lot more parking spaces. And again, it's really related to the West Avenue parking lot. It's not really related to the development site. And so it was, the code has 2 different sections. One says that you can have 10 spaces in a row. The other one, for specific to WBOD, is 5. And I think the reason they did that is because in the WBOD, there's a lot of smaller parking lots. And you might not have 10 in a row where we have a lot larger. So we're seeking a waiver of 255-80B2 to permit more than 5 parking spaces. I think it's really just a kind of hopefully a technical item. Happy to go through the remainder of the review letters, any questions you have on them. As Dave said, there's some cleanup in here. I'd say, a third or so of the review letters are restating the conditional use standards or conditions. And so that's kind of the first section of each one.
If I could just add one thing. We did resubmit plans that addressed these open cleanup items. They were submitted Friday, so staff has not reviewed them. Rob brought them. So to the extent the Planning Commission wants to see in each instance where Rob has fixed the plans to address these cleanup items, he's happy to do that. But they are all will comply and have been complied. We just haven't received that letter yet. Obviously, it was just submitted Friday, and they're normal
Which
human
puts
beings.
us at a disadvantage.
It puts, again, I completely understand that. But they are will comply, and the plans, again, have been cleaned to address them, and they were cleanup items. They were not substantive changes to the plan. They were missing a sheet.
I was going to say, does it include sheet 13?
It does include sheet 13. I just wanted to say, again, he did bring those plans because of the nature of the cleanup to be able to identify them if the board was interested in seeing them.
So, rather than go through all the items, and there's a significant amount, I think everybody agrees here. The transportation impact study, sorry.
The pedestrian
I'm sorry, the pedestrian study is, I'm assuming that if the township finds that unacceptable, you're not going to go in front of the BOC without a revision or?
That's right. It's going to be to the satisfaction of Mr. Norsini
Okay.
and Mr.
And
Drummond.
Mr. Drummond, of course. Okay. All right. So rather than go through the entire review letter, both of them, what are you not going to be in compliance with here?
The 5 parking spaces in a row. That was the one we asked for a waiver for. I believe everything else we're in compliance with.
So, Mr. Lambert, that's on the West Avenue parking lot, right?
That is correct.
So if you could make that distinction for the board, for the commission, that it's not the subdivision proper, but the parking lot.
Correct. Really, the subdivision proper, all the parking spaces are either under or within the building itself. And so the 5 spaces in a row really applies to the open parking lot, which is on the West Ave parking lot.
Can you speak to why you're requesting this waiver, and what are you getting out of it if we grant it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll open up a plan.
Please. And we will want to see sheet 13, just for the record.
There's sheet 13. It is details of a stormwater basin. So on sheet 23, you can see the layout of the West Avenue parking lot. And you can see, there's 6 spaces in a row, 6 spaces in a row, 10, 10, 10. So if we started adding, landscape islands in this, we're going to significantly reduce the number of parking spaces. And one of the stated goals was to maximize, of the commissioners, was to actually maximize the number of parking spaces that we were replacing off of the Lancaster Avenue, existing Bellevue lot, is to be able to maximize the parking in this West Ave lot. So we were able to add one way with the perpendicular. That was a waiver that was granted already. And this is just to clarify that the one section in the ordinance says you can have 10 in a row, the other one says 5. Again, we're trying to clarify that for this parking lot, that we're providing more than 5 spaces in a row.
If you were not granted this waiver, how many parking spaces would you yield? And would that put you below the limit of what you're required to provide?
I don't think there was a limit. I believe the goal was to have more than the existing, and I'm trying to think of the existing number off the top of my head. We have 103 existing. We would come very close to that 103 if we started adding a lot of landscape islands at every 5 spaces.
But not below 103, correct?
I'd have to look at the exact number when we configure it.
Who requested this waiver? Was this BOC driven?
It was. I was going to say the last when we were in front of the Board of Commissioners for Planning Commission, we had this exact same for preliminary approval, I should say. We had this discussion with them. Do you want us to put these islands in, or do you want more spaces? And their opinion was, no, we don't want to lose those spaces. We want the spaces. Do it as shown. We had additional discussions on this parking lot, as Mr. Lambert had said, about the one-way through traffic. We had to meet with Damon a number of times to get flow through the parking lot correct, the angle of the parking. But when it came to removing these spaces, our charge was to keep it as shown.
So had the BOC not made this request, we would never be looking at this waiver, correct?
We would have put the islands in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It is not an inability to comply. It is a direction to show as we've shown.
Okay.
Is your intent to plant trees on these islands?
Yes. It's a little bit non-traditional landscape plan. One of the requirements of this, of doing any work here is that we do not go underneath the surface of the existing asphalt, right? So we have an existing asphalt parking lot. AT&T says that we're not allowed to go underneath that asphalt. And so we've included planters. We've included planters throughout the landscape, throughout the parking lot to provide the trees.
Do you also have a lighting plan?
Yes. So this is the lighting plan at sheet 27 of 29. Again, most of the lighting is provided from the perimeter, again, because we can't go underneath the asphalt of the existing parking lot.
I mean, to me, what's more important than maximizing the number of parking spaces, which I believe this parking lot is going to be very critical to the success of downtown Wayne, is also to create a pleasant and safe parking lot that patrons and residents will want to use. Are there any considerations for above-ground sort of lighting structures without penetrating the barrier?
Yep, so what we have agreed to with staff is after construction of the parking lot and when the building is open, we are going to go back out to the parking lot and evaluate parking and see if there's any areas in the parking lot that do not meet the satisfaction of the township staff. If that's the case, we've agreed to increase the lighting necessary to provide any dark areas or areas that Mr. Orsini believes are inadequate to meet the discretion of the township. That was the agreement we made with
And
staff.
Mr. Wu, it was agreement with the Board of Commissioners,
That's correct.
not staff.
It was a very significant issue for the Board of Commissioners. That was a condition of their approval, that we have that post-construction meeting.
I don't have any more questions.
The asphalt situation, the environmental issue below, is that?
There are restraints below the surface that do not allow you to go beneath just a couple of inches without creating security concerns, safety concerns.
So David, you're asking for the removal of was it the 1:5 ratio for the plantings, right?
For the islands, correct.
For the islands. So if you remove that, what are you increasing? You're still increasing you're having planters though, still.
We are, that's correct.
What's the ratio, what ratio are you asking us to?
It's 10. We're meeting the 10 space requirement.
So from 1 to 5 to 1 to 10?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
What's the
So-
timing of completing this parking lot work?
I'm sorry.
What's the timing of completing this parking lot work
Yep.
compared to the new building?
Another question from the Board of Commissioners and from the solicitor. The parking lot will come online and be functional before we take the old parking lot offline.
Along the same vein, when you are planning to do construction, what do you contemplate being the staging area for the construction vehicles?
I'm going to step aside here and pass it off to Rob.
So, for the proposed plan, it's really, for this area, they're going to work from the parking lot. For the building itself, it will be from, again, we have a property, right? They're subdividing it, or we subdivided it, and they're going to work all on that site. So it's almost, there's a couple other projects in the township right now that are similar, where it's more like an urban project, right? Where you have a large building footprint and they're gonna really work, from that same site. So they'll start excavation, be able to remove everything, build the basement. Once they get up above the deck, they keep on building up, but they're really on site is really where they're going to be mobilized.
And one of the things I should note as well is that we've agreed with Mr. Norsini, we will not allow our workers to park on the street. So there will be no on-street parking for the folks doing the work. I know that was a concern for the township, and we've agreed to that.
Are they going to be using this particular lot that you are proposing to restripe?
Are they going to be using the 60 West lot?
The AT&T lot.
I think they're going to be pretty much on site. They're going to be using some spaces in that lot, but we are not going to allow them to overtake the lot.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Go into staff comment, and in particular, Mr. Solicitor. I think a couple of the items in particular, like on the Gilmore letter, relate to coordinating with the solicitor. Have they done that? Have you coordinated with them?
In regards to the new lease and the access easement over the AT&T property, is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
Yes. They've been talking to my partner, John Rice. John has sent me the latest versions of both of those documents, so they have been working with my office in that regard.
Okay. With regard to those items or any of the other items in the two review letters, do you have any further comments?
I do not believe so. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, do you have anything you want to highlight?
No, not at this time. You know, they indicated they submitted the letters and will comply. We'll have our review completed over the next couple of weeks. Again, there was mostly cleanup items in my letter. I don't have anything that I would consider to be a deal breaker, and if something would come about during that review, then the process would stop until they satisfied us.
Okay. And then, Mr. Drummond, I understand that maybe an hour and a half ago, the township received the study, which you probably haven't seen yet, so that's still out there. Any other items?
Other than the pedestrian study, there's, most of these are considered minor detailed comments. It sounds like they will comply with them. I don't have anything else.
Okay. Okay.
I have a few more questions. The Fleming letter, page 4, item 3, under subdivision and land development. Can you show us where you dimensioned the 2 parallel parking spaces?
So right in the center underneath the porte cochere area, we've dimensioned the 2 parallel parking spaces.
Okay. And could you show us that sheet 13 again? And okay. I guess, you know, from my vantage point, you've been in front of us several times. You've had, even from the beginning, there's been a significant series of hearings, been in front of us. You've met with the BOC, you've met with our consultants and engineering department, or township engineer, many times. And yet, the volume of the comments, even though each one doesn't appear lethal, it seems overwhelming.
I think it's, you know, there were small items. There's lots of, you know, as a result of all of those various meetings, things continuously change as a result of all those meetings, and some things that were kind of set earlier on then got changed, and, you know, some little things just didn't get picked up on that modification. Some things, such as the stormwater, will likely change through permitting, right? There'll be a lot of details. We're in an NPDES permit. They're going to request changes. We're going to be changing the plan to address, you know, kind of outside agency approvals. So there'll be continue to change, you know, little things as we go through. Obviously, we coordinate all of those with the township engineer as we proceed.
I guess I'm a little surprised. There are certain things that are here that are beyond your control, that have been pre-negotiated with the township, and you had to go get waivers. And, you know, I don't want to overlook that, but at the same time, you know, missing sheets, calculations, seems a little sloppy to me. That being said, you have had multiple meetings. It looks like our consultants and our engineer seem to want to move this project along.
Mr. Freeman, I would agree to that, but I would request that the commission consider some conditions as a recommendation of approval.
What were your thoughts, Mr. Norsini?
Even though they've been stated here, and actually I think one of the conditions would be, Mr. Falcone noted it, but I think it would be great to have it put out there, no parking on public streets. I know that's going to be part of the developer's agreement. Again, I know they've agreed to this, but the West Avenue parking lot must be complete prior to the closing of the Bellevue lot. And again, I know they have stated they have complied, but we haven't seen the plans yet, so that they must comply with all review letters from Gannett and Gilmore. PED study to the satisfaction of the township engineer and traffic engineer. And I think Mr. Nelson covered the lease agreements.
Thank you.
Mr. Norsini, in regards to the no parking on public streets, obviously for some projects you can see like, oh, the van that says Elliott Lewis or whatever it says. But for a project like this, you're going to have employees that are going to show up in their own personal vehicle. Does that imply to them as well?
Yes, sir. So there's a development in Wayne, 15168, and in that developer's agreement, and a requirement of the township was that there would be no employee, any parking on public streets and related to the construction. So that developer took the steps of procuring a lease for parking on a different ground and leasing spaces from the township. And that's what we would, however, we don't tell a developer how to do it. We just want to see that it's done so that the residents of Radnor Township aren't impacted by what at times will be a lot of construction vehicles, many construction vehicles.
Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment?
Good evening. John Aiken, South Bellevue Avenue. By the way, I appreciate the time that has been spent and the monies that have been invested in this project, and I can understand some of the logistical and procedure elements that you all deal with, and I'm appreciative of your time also. In the midsummer of 2023, a neighbor informed me of a construction project across the street and that there'd be an informal meeting in late summer. This was before the first October 18th meeting here with John Rice. Out of simple curiosity, I attended that meeting. I came away with more questions and answers, as did others also. As board meetings came and went from October 18th, 2023 through January 8th of 2024, and neighbors and other residents expressed concerns of multiple issues, this became more than just simple curiosity. For example, parking, which was already a problem and continues to be in and around Wayne, especially in downtown Wayne. It can be a nightmare there on North Wayne Avenue. Increased traffic flow with delivery vans, trucks, cars of retail customers, UPS, FedEx deliveries and pickups, residents' vehicles and visitors' cars, all of which coming and going through a single entrance and exit off of Bellevue Avenue, which will bear the brunt of traffic. More traffic, more noise and clutter, more vehicles exhausting and idling, more congestion and debris. And there remained an elephant in the room with the unknown future of the second parcel of the AT&T parking lot and what they decide to do. I presume that 60 West will probably be a part of that development down the road. Stormwater management, as we see here tonight and over the years, is always an issue, and storm sewers. We have an aging sanitary sewer as well, and there's the overall ecological impact. Possible building damage. There's also possible building damage for some folks to old houses and buildings from construction vibration. Other issues, all legitimate questions. Other questions came to mind to me. What is the downside? What could go wrong? Have the designers and engineers missed something? One worst case would be a fire in the basement parking area. A lithium battery combustion would be a disaster with only one entrance and access to the garage, which was previously furthest from the entrance on Bellevue Avenue. I understand 60 West has secured emergency access through AT&T from West Avenue. This would mitigate access problems or emergency situations. It is an improvement, but it's not perfect. At this recent juncture, a question arose. If I was designing, first I was simply curious. Secondly, I was concerned about problems in listening to residents and neighbors. And then I went to a third stage, and I asked, a question arose that if I was designing this project, what would I do to rearrange a big box of a building into an innovative and integrative design, and how to think outside of the box. You're all familiar with the expression, think outside of the box. Is that something everybody knows about? You know, we need to expand ourselves out of our comfort zone to kind of look back and see what we might have missed. And over the decades, and I've lived in Radnor Township for a little over 7 decades, and I've seen unintended consequences come when variances, exemptions, and waivers, if I'm using the verbiage correctly, are given to developers, and we've ended up with unintentional problems, such as the field down at, when it was a junior high, not the middle school, we had problems in the field there, and there was often water down in the girls' basement. We will sometimes have problems such as, this is a pamphlet put out by Radnor Township, and I don't know if this will show up on the, here. This is flooding in an area of Wayne with a massive storm that we had. And also, here we have some emergency responders rowing around in a boat, and at one point we had water down on South Wayne Avenue near
Mr.
the fire.
Aiken, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's customary that we limit public comment to 5 minutes. You've exceeded that time. Just wanted to make you aware.
I guess my time's up.
No, I just wanted to, that's up to the chair. I just wanted to let you know where you're at with time.
Do you have a few more minutes, or? I want to give you a chance to say what you want to say.
Okay, I'll make an attempt for that, and I do appreciate the consideration. As I was saying, if I was designing this project, what would I do to arrange a big box of a building into an innovative and integrative design, and how to think outside of the box? How can it echo the past with a connection to history, serve the present, and embrace a future of integrative design planning? This project is akin to a square peg in a round hole, or attempting to fit a size 12 foot into a size 8 shoe. There will be unintended consequences. Time is precious, especially as I enter the winter of my life at 70, coming up on 77 years of age. I grew up and was trained and had my career here in Radnor Township, and I'm semi-retired now. I don't get a lot of commissions. There are many things that this short time would have allowed me to address, but water management, wastewater management, sewer management, infrastructure, we continue to build and put pressure on existing infrastructure across the country, not just here in Radnor Township, but east, west, north, and south. We find that infrastructures are often not able to handle a bad situation, whether it's fire or flooding or derailing or sinkholes or any number of problems that arise that we weren't expecting and takes us by surprise. There's a lot more I could say. I'm not going to press the time you gave me and take advantage of it, but I came up with the design. The last thing I'll say is I gave a lot of thought, and I am a professional artist, designer, among other things, and in doing a bold and innovative design, I came up with a concept that I did attempt to present it to some boards and also to Mr. Kearns that would resolve a lot of problems. One, there would be ground level parking rather than underground. Underground could be storage units and lockers for tenants to store things. Retail and commercial could be moved to the east side of the property, down near the business section, not just on Bellevue, and a more residential concept could be done on Bellevue. Prefabricated modules that fit together like Lincoln logs to build this building could be made off-site and brought in.
I appreciate your design thoughts, but right now we have their design, their building. That's what's on the table right now. I can't redesign their building.
Well, the ground hadn't been broken yet, and there is always time to make changes, which
True.
usually don't happen.
True. I would ask the applicant, do you have any responses to any of the items, including in particular maybe the stormwater and to the issue of flooding that has happened in parts
Well,
of
it wasn't just stormwater, it's overall water management, sanitary fewers,
Okay.
runoff, et cetera,
Okay.
and into the watershed of Delaware County and Radnor Township. We're dumping pollution into the waters that become part of recreational things and even drinking water.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would direct that probably to Mr. Norsini.
Am I staying standing here? or did I
No,
sit
we're
down?
good. Thank you.
So as far as,
Thank you for your comments.
thanks. So the analysis this applicant in particular has done with respect to stormwater and analyzing the existing system in Wayne, we've worked really closely with staff and Mr. Norsini to get that imagery done and to do the reports that are necessary. So I think they have done a lot of that, Commissioner Vines, and I think that they've done an exceptional amount of data collection on behalf of the township. So I think they've done what they can do.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Brian White. I live at 303 West Avenue, which is... So I have two comments. So first, on the parking lot on West Avenue, the current AT&T lot. So, first of all, the current lot is a total eyesore, and everything that they propose, I think, is really an improvement. However, I would say that, the current lot on Bellevue was really underutilized, which was one of the reasons that the township was okay with using it as a special district and moving the lot. And so I kind of would like to push back against the philosophy that we need to maximize parking spaces in the new lot. And it was pointed out, it's not just that we need the maximum parking spaces, but also a nice lot for those of us who walk by it all the time between our houses and the downtown part of Wayne. And so I think that the landscape improvements are going to make it a lot nicer than it is. But I would favor not granting the waiver and doing 1 to 5 parking spaces and losing the 5 additional spaces for the additional beauty that would give us, those of us who live there. And secondly, just overall, I know that those of us who live in the area, the pedestrian impact study was really important to us. And so it does sort of leave a sour taste in my mouth that if we're approving things sort of conditionally on information that we're supposed to have gotten here, we couldn't review that as the public. And so, I don't know the whole process, but I really would like to make sure that we review that in detail before, granting things that we can't then take back.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Norsini, just a point of clarification real quick. We can vote on the application that's before us, and will that pedestrian study be available before the Board of Commissioners addresses the issue?
That's a great question, Mr. Vine. So the intent would be, so we just received that PED study this evening, as you noted, around 5:30. So it will get reviewed. It will be in the packet that goes before the Board of Commissioners. So pending what happens tonight, the applicant's next step is caucus for final before the Board of Commissioners, and that study would be in that packet that gets published online Wednesday before the meeting.
Okay, very good.
I have a question regarding the PED study. What are we expecting to see in that study, and what could potentially imperil this project?
Mr. Freeman, I really, I can't answer that at this point till.
Can you speculate? I mean,
I'm not one to speculate on these items, Mr. Freeman.
okay, got it. But my next question is that if there is an impact on the project, what would be the next step? A meeting with the developer to resolve?
I think the main purpose of the pedestrian study was to look at the various routes and more on the positive side. So what can be attained? So Mr. Drummond has already reviewed the traffic impact study, and we will review this study. If there was something brought to light as an issue, absolutely we'll try to address that with the developer. I think also it's going to show us areas to possibly improve to further enhance the ability of, and it's not just this development, right? We took that study down to Waynewood, actually beyond. So it's all of the Wayne Business District there.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a condition for the applicant to contribute to a fund for pedestrian improvements in the area, correct?
Let Mr. Falcone answer that.
We committed $10,000 per unit, so $450,000 to those improvements to the extent the township wants to make any of them.
Okay, and those pedestrian improvements haven't been decided upon yet, so they
That's
could
right.
be informed by the study.
The Board of Commissioners will be informed by our study, and then they'll have a bucket of money within which to utilize as they see fit, and the township working with staff sees fit.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak? Do any of the commissioners have any additional questions or comments? Okay.
I have a question on the parking lot on West Avenue. I agree with the public comment about the medians. I'd rather give up 7 parking spaces and have a little more greenery, but on that parking lot, there's a tree line around the perimeter of most of that lot currently. That's not going to be disturbed, correct? And then there's a chain link fence around that perimeter. Is that fence planned to be replaced or removed?
Which fence, I'm sorry?
Around that parking lot on West Avenue.
I don't think we were proposing anything with the fence, but there were some trees that were currently along West Ave that were Norway maples as an invasive, and they were smaller caliper. So we took the opportunity actually to put in new street trees right along West Ave. Obviously, we talked about the trees throughout the parking lot, and then a little bit on the perimeter of the parking lot are more traditional trees where we can actually, they're in the planters too, so they're on the kind of the left side or the west end of the parking lot.
And the tree line to that neighboring residential property, that's not being disturbed?
No. The only area that was being disturbed was along West Ave.
So unbeknownst to Mr. Lambert, we have requested that the applicant provide black estate fencing to replace the current chain link fencing.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something agreeable? Something you agree to, Mr. Falcone?
Yeah, the applicant has stated they agree to that.
Okay, and can you tell me what kind of fencing that is, black?
What kind of fencing they're this is the first time we've heard it, so.
Okay.
So Mr.
We're all
Kearns has
ears.
heard it, but it's black estate fencing, right?
Black estate fencing. Okay.
Is that one of the conditions?
We could make it that, Mr. Freeman.
That was
Let's do that. I have one other question regarding Mr. Way's comment. As far as no more than 5 spaces shall be permitted in a contiguous row. My understanding, just for double clarification here, is that this is BOC driven. And as long as you meet the requirement for 103 spaces, you don't need to have this waiver. This was requested that you make it by the BOC?
So there's actually no threshold parking requirement for us. So this parking lot doesn't have its own parking requirement, whereas if we built, like our units have parking requirements that we're providing on site. This is just providing a new parking lot. So I mean, I think there's no code-driven requirement there that says you need 103 spaces. I think what we're saying is the current lot has 103 spaces. The idea was to provide that and then some, and we've done different variations of this parking lot that produced different numbers of parking spaces. And so as we went through that discussion with staff and in front of the Board of Commissioners, the determination of that board was this was the design that the board wanted to see. It's not simply like a 5-lot, like you're not losing just one space for every island, because the islands will impact more than just one space. So it's a reconfiguration of the number. It's a more significant loss. And when we get down to 103 or less, the feedback we got from the Board of Commissioners was, we don't want that. We want to see the additional parking spaces. We had another variation of the plan that would have produced even more parking spaces than that, but would have had different circulation. They were not interested in that plan. This was where we landed on. This was kind of the sweet spot, if you will.
From what I can see of the conditional use hearing resultant conditions, there's 17 of them, the number of parking spaces is not a requirement on this new lot that's being restriped.
That's right.
So this is a negotiated view and therefore landscaping plan for the parking area driven by the BOC.
That's correct. The entire, everything in this lot, the way the trees are, where we landed with lighting, all driven by Board of Commissioner discussion, and then ultimately meeting with staff and further discussion there.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes.
I actually have one question. I'm actually curious, and this is one question for you, Dave, and one question to the staff. So you had said earlier in your presentation that the developer, your client, will give $10,000 per unit to the township.
That was a condition of the conditional use.
Okay, so that's $450,000.
That's correct.
When does that get paid to the township? Is that?
That's also in the conditional use. It's staggered, right, Peter? I don't have the exact language, but the timing of that commitment is set when that money comes online. It's tied to the issuance of the COs, I believe.
Okay, so to the township, who makes a decision about where and how that money gets spent? Because I'm sure it's besides your client. I'm sure some of the other developers also contribute money to this, call it fund, that the township gets. So who?
Mr. Nat, that's always the Board of Commissioners, right? That's always going to be the Board of Commissioners wherever any funds are spent.
Is that all? Is there some sort of level of transparency with that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to tell you that I know Radnor is the most transparent when it comes to these types of things. So if there is a request from staff to do a project, whatever that project is, there's a legislative memo that outlines previous history, funding, the cost of what's being proposed, and then there is a resolution to that effect. So that will go before the board, and that is discussed and ultimately approved by the board.
Is there like a running balance of this, called sub-fund of?
So this is the first fund specific, so this is a very specific $450,000 that was noted in the conditional use adjudication. So this is, as far as I know, is a standalone fund. That actually would be a question for the manager, Mr. White, or finance director, Mr. Tate, but as far as I know, this is a standalone fund. But all expenditures of any sort go through the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orsini. Thank you.
If I can just chime in, Mr. Falcone, the conditional use decision actually states that the schedule of payment would be established during land development process. So to the Planning Commission, if you want to make a recommendation as to the schedule of payment of this $450,000.
Mr. Nelson, I think there was a letter from Mr. Rice to this effect in the file.
In the file.
We asked for clarification on this and a couple of other conditions, and Mr. Rice issued a letter.
Let me see if I can find that.
Okay, yeah.
Did you bring your checkbook? We'd like it tonight.
That would be
That'll,
certified.
that'll be one of the conditions.
That would be certified, Mr. Falcone.
Are we waiting on you, solicitor?
You could be. I'm looking, I haven't found it yet.
Can we just assume that there is a payment schedule?
You certainly can, yes.
All right. That's acceptable to the township,
It's acceptable to my answer.
to Commissioner Nat. Okay, very good.
Okay. Does any other commissioner have a comment? Good. I'm going to attempt to make a motion, and I believe it has 7 conditions to it. This would be a motion to recommend approval of application 213836 for final land development at 60 West Avenue with the following conditions. Number 1, that the items identified in the Gannett Fleming and Gilmore and Associate letters of February 21, 2025 are all to be complied with the exception of Code Section 255-80B2 with regard to the West Avenue lot. Number 2, no on-street parking during construction by anyone involved in the construction. 3, that the West Avenue lot will be completed before construction of the property between the AT&T and Lancaster Avenue begins. 4, that the pedestrian study will be reviewed by both Mr. Norsini, the township engineer, and Mr. Drummond to their satisfaction. 5, the use of black estate fencing. And 6, that the lighting will be reviewed after construction and will be adjusted as needed for the township engineer.
Yeah, I think that's already a condition, but we'll have it again. That was part of preliminary from the
Fine.
board, but we'll have it again.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll stop at 6. Do I have a second, or do I have any amendment?
Mr. Norsini, did we capture all of that?
Yes, sir.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So all in favor with the exceptions of recusals from Commissioner Kunda and from Commissioner Varenhorst.
Just want to say we appreciate the Planning Commission hearing this project out again, and we apologize for the state of the plans, but we appreciate you giving us the forum tonight to talk it through with you and allow the project to move forward. So thank you for that.
Very good. Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of application 213920 for final minor subdivision plans at 245 Willow Avenue. In 2021, the applicant consolidated 245 and 247 Willow Avenue into one property. The applicant would now like to subdivide the property, add stairs to access the front porch of 247 Willow. At the January 7, 2025 Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission voted to recommend approval, or to recommend that the applicant zoning board approval appeal 3201 be approved by the zoning board. The applicant appeared before the zoning board on January 23, 2025, received a variance for section 280-35A1 regarding the lot size, and section 280-35A8 regarding impervious coverage. As part of our consideration, we have received the Gannett Fleming letter dated February 13, 2025, and Gilmore and Associates letter dated February 20th, 2025. Do we have a representative for the applicant?
Yes, it's John and Bridget McDonald are here. We're the residents. I was told that I'd be able to open up an image here. Is that possible? I put the jump drive in. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So I'm not we're not attorneys, and so I'm kind of going to just go through this, I guess.
Don't worry, we have some on staff.
Okay.
And on the board.
Okay. So Bridget and I had, in 2016, purchased the other half of our twin, and in 2021 consolidated them to a single-family home with the expectation that we would be growing old here. Unfortunately, we have since gotten divorced, and so in order for Bridget and the children to stay in Radnor, we've been here for 25 years. In fact, I still, well, I live at the Sheldrake now, but the intent is to subdivide it so that Bridget can afford to stay on Willow Avenue. Even though it floods, it's an amazing street and township, and we have no intention of leaving. So, so the intent is to undo what we did just a few years ago. So that being said, we did receive, is it okay for me just to go right to the letters? Would that be appropriate?
Sure.
Okay. So we did receive letters from Gannett Fleming and Gilmore, and I just wanted to go through our response. I had very quickly today drafted a response letter, but I don't know that anybody's seen it because it literally was sent to you or to these gentlemen earlier this afternoon. The first comment was that the final for sewage facilities planning, that the final plan approval will not be granted until planning approval or planning exemption is received from the PA DEP. I just wanted to state that the existing infrastructure still exists as it was, although Bridget had been able to have the bills consolidated to a single bill. Both sanitary structures still exist. So, so I wasn't sure what requirements would be required in that regard.
Let me ask if we can just go to staff first. Mr. Phillips, can you just comment on your letter?
Sure. So this specific comment, the DEP still requires this a subdivision. So a mailer will have to be filled out and sent to the DEP indicating what you're doing, and they will either require further permitting or they will give you what's called a waiver of planning. And that will come back to you, and if it's a waiver of planning, then we're done. If it's something more, they'll dictate what more there is to do that in their eyes. But because it's a subdivision, it needs to go through that process.
Okay.
Okay, and the next item, which is with regard to zoning of the 2 parking spaces required, and they must be dimensioned. Is that something?
Yes,
that's
it's
outstanding?
a zoning requirement that each unit requires 2 on-site parking lots. And we had asked to have those dimensioned, and in this area, you can't park in the front yard setback. You remember that ordinance that we tried to revise a while ago that ended up not like we intended to. That would need to, they would need to show compliance with that, or go to the zoning officer and then seek zoning relief for the parking.
Is that something you're complying with?
Well, I thought we were. I didn't realize that we weren't allowed to park in the front yard setback. 247 does accommodate 2 cars, but 1 would be in the front yard. 245 currently has 1 car in the front yard, but actually I took a picture today because we do park both cars on the 245 side in that space, but it doesn't conform to the dimension requirements. So that's the challenge with.
Yeah, I would think that needs either further determination from the zoning officer or and potentially zoning relief for that.
Yeah, just for me to chime in on that. since this is an existing use, and obviously you're not changing anything, and you were approved, the combination was approved a couple of years ago, I would talk to the zoning officer, Kevin Kachansky, and get his opinion on what is the proper way to deal with this. He could find you to be what's called an existing non-conforming use, in which case you're good to go, or he could say, yeah, you don't comply, you're going to either need to change the plans or go, try to get relief from zoning hearing board, that was discussed earlier with that mound. But yeah, I would talk to him and figure out how to deal with this situation. You just have to recognize that just because you can park there, like when you say it's illegal, it's not illegal. Like if you're parking there, it's not illegal. It just doesn't meet the zoning requirements. And for us to give you approval, you have to meet those requirements.
Right.
So that's what you need to talk to Kevin about, because
Okay.
he's the gatekeeper on that sort of issue.
Okay. And yeah, just, if I could say, just the other thing that challenges the site with this is that the impervious is already maxed out. So the impervious doesn't permit any additional parking to be added.
Since the zoning issue is going to kind of stop us cold here, I do want to make a clarification here. They're going to need to get some sort of zoning opinion from either our zoning officer or, at worst case, they may have to come back to us for a recommendation to go then to the zoning hearing board, correct?
Correct.
Solicitor? Okay. Would it be appropriate for us to indicate how we would lean on that issue today, rather than having them come back, potentially? Or to maybe signal some sort of a they don't have...
You certainly could signal something. I think if they have to go to the zoning hearing board, the staff are required to put it on your agenda again.
Mhm.
You could then, at that time, say, well, hey, we've already looked at this, we're not going to make another recommendation. But at this point in time, yes, if you want to, provide some signals, as you put it, that's certainly something that the planning commission can do at this point in time.
Okay, should we deal with any other items on the review letter today, other than zone?
I would recommend that you continue through that, and maybe your motion would be contingent upon satisfying the outstanding zoning issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips.
To clarify, just on, you didn't change any driveways when you consolidated the lot, or you're not proposing to change any driveways now?
No, that's correct.
Only-
Nothing has changed
You're just
on
putting
the site.
wood stairs onto the front porch? to
Yeah,
access.
exactly.
Do the stairs affect the parking?
Not at all, no.
Yeah, for the board's information, there are no improvements proposed under this. It's purely a subdivision.
Do we have any members of the public here to speak on this application? Okay. Do we have any other commissioner comment, question? Okay. Do we want to have a motion, an indication?
Before you do that, there are several additional waivers identified in my letter that weren't requested, that I have no objection to the board moving forward and considering those or approving those. They are, again, items on the plan that, one of them is to provide contour lines. They're doing no improvements to the lot, so the contour lines would serve no purpose.
Okay.
But we would need waivers for that.
Okay. At this point, I was intending that we were headed towards tabling the item today.
My interpretation from council was that we could vote to recommend approval contingent upon zoning as well as the review letters. Is that correct?
You certainly could do that, yes.
So that's an option.
Okay. We good with it?
Okay.
Could I have a motion then?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion. So, in the matter of 245 Willow Avenue, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval, granting the waivers requested by the Gannett Fleming letter of February 13, as well as compliance with any zoning requirements related to parking. The entire motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kunda. All in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimous.
Thank you so much. We
Good luck.
really appreciate it.
So just to follow up on that, reach out to Kevin Kachansky at the zoning officer and, try to get that squared away before you move forward on anything else. Okay?
Yeah, and then
Finally get to vote.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of application 213939 at 221 South Aberdeen. The application is for a preliminary final minor subdivision. Applicant is proposing to subdivide the existing property into two new parcels, one with an existing single detached dwelling. As part of the consideration, we have received letters from Gannett Fleming dated February 19, 2025, and from Gilmore and Associates dated February 13, 2025. And I think we have a representative of the applicant.
Excuse me. Hi, Patrick Spellman, Site Engineering Concepts. I'm here with Greg Lingo, who is the equitable owner in the project with Rockwell Homes, Wayne. The project's located at the corner of South Aberdeen and Ivan Road. The intent is to subdivide off a second lot on the corner, leaving the original house on its own lot. And then this lot would then be used to construct another single-family home. We do have the letters, as you mentioned. Most of the items are cleaning up some plans, but there are several things that we'd like to get the board's input on, and we'll also need it from the commissioners. And I would just like to go over those 5 items right now, if that works for you. So looking at the Township Engineers letter, in the second section, subdivision and land development, going to comment number 2, involving significant features within 500 feet. The letter says to provide them or to request a waiver, and we would ask for a waiver to the extent needed. What we're providing is an aerial photograph of the area that's showing roads, houses, driveways, and, well, and a lot of trees.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
So again, we will show what we have, can get publicly from publicly available GIS data, which is pretty much most of the stuff. But
Let's go to the other items.
pardon me?
Go forward with the other.
Okay, right. So comment number 3 is curbing and sidewalks on minor collector streets. The curbing, we're going to match what's there.
Actually, did you skip over the first one?
The steep slopes?
Yeah.
I did. It was just that we have to add, show the steep slopes that are in the right of way. So there are some steep slopes here that we don't show because we don't really count them. Let me go to a better drawing. Since this area is netted out anyway, it's not included in the steep slopes netting.
That's a minor technicality of the ordinance itself. The lot, in Radnor Township, existing lots extend to the center line of the roadways. So the ordinance says for the entire lot, so we would indicate that on the entire lot.
Right. Now, do you want me to go down these point by point, or did you think that was requesting a waiver, that comment number 1? Yeah, it's increasing the shading there. So going to comment number 3, which is about curbing and sidewalks, must be provided or waiver requested. With respect to the curbing, we'll match the curbing that's there and repair whatever needs to be repaired during any construction. Sidewalks, we would ask for a waiver from. Aberdeen currently doesn't have any sidewalks. It leads to a very interesting area over here where it meets Ivan, which does not have sidewalks. Conestoga does not. Church does not. And we just don't feel like we want to bring people up here and abandon them at this corner.
I would suggest that if you worked north down South Aberdeen Avenue, you would eventually meet sidewalks that would lead to St. Catherine's.
Yeah, down at St. Catherine's.
I would say that there's sidewalks or something similar to sidewalks that start probably one house over where Orchard hits.
There's a path. I wouldn't call it like a township ordinance. Yeah, it's not a township ordinance sidewalk. I wouldn't say that it was to township standards.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you could still lead to them.
It's basically a path on the bench, and that's what would lead down past this lot and the lot next door. So there are paths on the grassed bench along the curbing, but I'd be hesitant to call any of them sidewalks. And we would not do anything to impede that. And again, the folks would be, anybody coming down Aberdeen would have to be coming from an area which is not very hospitable to walkers. I don't know how you get to this point and continue down Aberdeen from that intersection.
They could be coming from the new house you're proposing.
Yes, they could. They can use the bench that's alongside, or would use the bench as the current owners would probably use if they're walking down into Wayne. Comment number 4 is referring to right-of-way width and cartway. Focusing on South Aberdeen first, the right-of-way is 50 feet and requirement is 60. So the half right-of-way would be 30 feet and we're providing 25. So we would have to ask the Board of Commissioners if they're going to ask for the increased right-of-way to be dedicated. Cartway width, we have to add to the plans. It's about 20 to 21 feet, where 36 is required. Again, so we're talking about 10 feet on our side, where the half cartway width would be 18, which means we would have to add another 8 feet, and we would ask for, we would see if the commissioners would require that, and if they did, we would ask for a waiver. I don't believe it's really a waiver at this point until they ask for it, and I'm looking for confirmation.
Correct, it's at their discretion.
Yes. So, once we understand their intent and their wishes, we can address that further. But our intent would be to not widen the cartway. The right-of-way, if it was dedicated, would not affect the lot area calculations. Over on Ivan, that is 60 feet wide, the right-of-way. So no dedication is needed there. But again, the cartway is less than the 36. This is about 20 feet, 21 feet, 18, somewhere in here. Again, needing 8 to 10 feet to be widened on our side. Again, we would, which would be technically very difficult to do. Comment number 5 is again about sidewalks. It's referring to the width, and we would ask, obviously, a waiver from sidewalks, which would include this ordinance. And then comment number 6 talks about street trees. We would intend to ask the Board of Commissioners to accept the existing trees that are along the frontages to satisfy that requirement. There are quite a number of trees on both South Aberdeen and Ivan, more than needed for the requirement. So we would ask for that determination from them, which I believe, again, is not a waiver. It's their discretion to accept suitable existing trees. Really, the rest of it is adding notes, details, clarifications, and everything will comply from that point on. With Damon's letter, again, the two issues.
Before we move on to that letter, there's a comment at the bottom here about the zoning summary table being inconsistent with what's shown on the plan for lots 1 and 2. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's just a typo that the numbers are, I forget exactly where it is, but I think this 61, excuse me, this 81 should be 86. Yeah, I forget it, yeah.
I believe there were some clarifications between net and gross lot area and the way that it was calculated. That's just just a clarification. That's all it is.
Mr. Phillips, regarding the dimensioning of the parking spaces, what's your opinion of that? Is that a will comply? I mean, they obviously have the room. They just didn't dimension it?
Absolutely. And typically on a structure like this, they would be within the garage of the house, but it just wasn't shown on the plan. But absolutely, they will comply. We just need to have it shown.
Yeah, 2-car garage.
Okay, thanks.
So for the only real issues that I picked out in the transportation engineer letter, again, involves cartway and right-of-way width. He pointed out the same discrepancies. And then just adding notes and a question about a signal box, whether it's in the right-of-way, and it is. A traffic signal easement won't be necessary.
Is that something you can show on your plans?
Yeah,
With that, because
I will make it clear, yeah.
based on the right-of-way we see here, it does not look like it's in the right-of-way.
All right. We will clarify that.
So one question on the Gilmore letter, if you have that, page 2. Number 4, section 255-28-28, the site distance. Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, so we will show that from 10 feet back from both the existing driveway and the proposed driveway, that we have a clear line of sight up the street in both directions without being impeded by vegetation. So it's merely just measuring back 10 feet and then drawing a line so that Damon can see that it's not hitting any trees or anything, and that it's not going around any bends.
Okay, so is it accurate that you're going to comply with everything on both letters with the exception of the 500 feet and sidewalks?
Sidewalks, correct.
Everything else is a will comply?
Will comply.
Okay, so, Mr. Norsini?
I have no comment, sir.
No comment. Do you have a comment on the sidewalk issue?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, Mr. Drummond, do you have any further comments if he will comply with all other items?
I have no further comments, except with the site distance, I just want to verify if there would be any vegetation that will be needed to be removed.
Right. So when we get the lines on here, I'm not expecting it to come down any vegetation, but if it does, we'll identify it as being removed.
Okay.
I would just say on that note, you're suggesting you're going to use the existing vegetation in lieu of new vegetation.
Right, so-
And now we're saying, but we might have to remove some existing
Right, so
vegetation.
so if there's a conflict there, we'll have to reconcile it. I'm just not expecting there to be a conflict, especially with the number of trees that are along the frontage, that if one was to have to come out, it wouldn't really affect the street tree count. You know, below the ordinance requirement, obviously, be one less tree, but it would still be over the requirement.
Okay. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to comment on this application?
I actually, before we go to the public, I have one little item. The purchase and sale agreement, Mr. Lingo, signed by the property owners, but not by you. We need a fully signed and executed agreement to be submitted.
No problem. We'll send you that copy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further commissioner comment or question?
I just have a question, an engineering question. When you subdivide a property, do you have to do stormwater management for both properties?
Not both. So the stormwater management is based on what impervious is being added.
Okay.
So if we subdivide this, so what we're showing here is proves viability of this lot, that we can put a reasonable house, we can get reasonable access, we can design a reasonable stormwater control system. On lot 1, there will be no impervious added, so it does not trigger stormwater.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, any other comment by commissioner, public, staff? No. Okay. Do we have a motion that anyone wants to put forward on this?
Sure. In the matter of 221 South Aberdeen Avenue, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous,
Abstain.
with the exception of Commissioner Kunda, who abstains.
Right, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Good night.
Okay, the next and hopefully last item on the agenda is consideration of application 212-981 for land development for the new Ithan Elementary School. This application is for preliminary land development. Here, the proposal is to demolish and construct, demolish the existing Ithan Elementary and construct on its place a new building. As part of the consideration, we've received letters from Gilmore on February 17, 2025, and from Gannett Fleming on February 24, 25. And I see that we have a representative for the applicant.
You do. So one quick clarification, I think that the
Did I reverse-
Gannett Fleming is.
I reversed the dates?
You did, and Gilmore is the 24th, but in any event. David Falcone here on behalf of the school district. You all have seen this project previously. We are still seeking just preliminary recommendation to get to the Board of Commissioners. We do have those updated review letters from Gannett and from Gilmore. The project is moving along, but as you all know, timing is important at this point for the district. We think we're in pretty good shape with Roger's letter. We do know that we have some outstanding issues on Damon's. We would like the Planning Commission to consider a recommendation tonight based upon our agreement to comply with the additional requirements in these letters, and so that we can kind of move this process along. I would say the district is aware that this is an ask of both staff and of the Planning Commission, and I think, but for the significance at this point of the timing of keeping this project on schedule, I don't think we would even have come tonight. I think we would have taken the extra month to go back, continue to meet with Damon and with Roger, who I will say have been very helpful to this point in getting us here. But there is some urgency to seeing this at least get kind of moved on so that we can get to preliminary and then be right back kind of into the chute to get to final, which allows us to then go to bid and to hit some of those things we talked about kind of ad nauseum the last time we were here, which was timing to get built in the right moment to get the building online. So I'm not going to belabor the comments. I think we have to get into the significance of the traffic issues that are out there. So we have our traffic engineer here. I'm here if I can add any additional insight, but we know what we're here to do, and that is to try and address as best we can in conversation with you and with Damon the open traffic items and how we think we can meet those with a condition of satisfaction of the letters. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. She can be up here to handle that discussion from you all.
Mr. Falcone, before you go, just clarifying comment. Obviously, I'm having like
Deja vu.
Deja vu
Here I am.
Except for it's far worse. I mean, we're
Right.
talking about children here, and
Right.
we've seen this plan before. You've cleaned up some. There's still many unresolved issues. If we decide, you know what, we're just not satisfied with the progress that you're making in front of us, and we ask you to come back, what happens?
So it pushes us off our mark. So we become endangered of missing our appropriate start date, which then puts significant construction and demolition activity misaligned with when students are there. So it could do a couple of things. It could push the whole project off a full year, which would then just move it back a year. And there are significant financial ramifications to meeting or to missing those deadlines. We are obviously aware that we're talking about public funds there. So that is a very significant.
Is that on the township?
No, it's on us.
No, well,
Yeah.
when you say us, who do you mean?
It's on the school district. I mean, it's township school district funds that are moving forward to build this.
But what was the delay? What's the delay in
The delay is
addressing
on us not providing you the data you need in the traffic letter.
the school district or the
It is on the school
architects or
district.
the consultants or whoever?
It is on the school district's team to not deliver the information that was very specifically requested from your consultants. And we're really talking about one critical and important data point on traffic generation at the peak hour of when the school district lets out. What is that count? So our counts were focused on general peak hours of intersections, and I'm getting a little over my skis here, but we submitted counts based on general data on intersections. What Damon asked us was, please provide the data, the peak for your use. When is your school letting out? When are those parents coming online in these intersections? And it didn't exactly align with when the peak impact was in general for the intersection. So when we did our counts.
No, but didn't we discuss that last time?
We did. And we actually met with staff, and they said, we need this data.
But it's not done.
It's not done. It has
How
not.
is it not done?
So I'm going to hand it off to our traffic engineer. I can't answer why it's not done.
Well, got it. But I assume that's still due. And I assume you cannot start construction without it.
That's correct.
Even if we vote tonight, we're not going to let you move forward without satisfying that requirement to the satisfaction of the township.
That's absolutely correct.
So how is us tabling you tonight going to imperil the project?
So if we would then be back So we're off 1 month. So if we had a recommendation from the board tonight, it would be, subject to compliance here, we move then on, our next step is the Board of Commissioners. If we're tabled, our next step is back here in April, and then we're, 2 weeks after that to our first stop at the Board of Commissioners. So you make very good points, but it just starts to snowball when you miss. If we're pushed off and back to you all next month, it's a month.
Mr. Falcone, you're not going to present in front of the BOC without the traffic
Correct.
data.
That's correct.
When is the traffic data coming?
So again, I think that's probably a question for the traffic engineer.
Got
But
it.
I will say, so I do see this as slightly distinct from the last application. So I think we've done a good job on Roger's comments, which were like missed things to make the plan relatively clean. This is more of a data point issue, and this is something that, and why I think it's something that I think more closely aligns with getting a recommendation for preliminary approval subject to compliance here. It's because this is something that is going to continue to evolve in our discussions with the township, because what this is actually doing is requiring us to come up with proposed mitigation measures for the project. Not necessarily that the school district would have to bring online, but maybe the township, if they felt they were necessary, could bring them on. So we are identifying areas where there could be mitigation need, and then that are resultant from this project, and then working with the township to see how best to implement that mitigation. So I think it's, no matter what, I think it's going to be a continually evolving process all the way through final as we really understand what's going to happen here. And in addition to that, one of the key data points that's driving this is what's going to be the actual impact here. So we've got 544 students at the school today. We really believe this is going to bring another 100, this project. But maximum capacity for the project is maybe 200. We don't envision that, but that's what the building is maxed out at. So the data we're giving you is at that max number. So even then, we're really dealing with, is this really going to happen? And I think one of the things we talked about with staff was setting even like a threshold. Like, if you actually go above this number, we should probably revisit this down the line if you ever cross over that threshold. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for a school, because it's so fluid in enrollment. I mean, you talk about studies that are done routinely by school boards that try and track birth data, enrollment data, and try and project it. And the reality is there are waves that come through schools and districts. You get peaks and valleys where you have spikes in enrollment, and then that grade or that bubble moves through your system, and it goes from Ithan to then the middle school, and then to the high school, and then it's out. But it's not a sustainable always enrollment number. It's why some years you have 5 fifth grades and 3 third grades. I'm just using random numbers, and then that evolves.
What's the number? How big is the school supposed to be again?
The maximum capacity for the building size is 750. We're at 540 now. We think after this is built, it's going to be somewhere in the mid-6s. That's what we envision for enrollment here, based on our projections.
Wouldn't it be sensible, if it's hardware as the primary or a significant component of the mitigation, to just do it and be done?
If you're talking about timing and signalizing and things like that. So I think that's part of the discussion that we've had with Damon and with Steve, is how do we mitigate? Is it
Why
really
not just plan for 750 and live with comfort for a change?
For sure. I think the concern might be, what if it's not? What if it's maybe we need another turn lane, or there's some other physical improvement that is derived from this? How does that actually come online? We're talking about an intersection really for all of you, it's 320 and Bryn Mawr Avenue. And for anybody that lives anywhere near that, it's a nightmare today. when you're trying to get to work or wherever you're going. So, but if you think about it, you get up to that intersection and every direction has a turn lane. Coming, left onto Bryn Mawr Avenue from 320, there's a left-hand turn lane. You have the left onto 320 off of Bryn Mawr Avenue. You've got the left onto 320 off of Bryn Mawr Avenue. So, and then the left onto Bryn Mawr Avenue off of 320. So every lane or every direction has at least one turn lane. Dedicated.
Just as a clarifying question here, if there is impact and it's greater than anticipated, is the mitigation partly on the school district, or is it wholly onto the township? Can you speculate?
I can't speculate. I think Mr. Norsini said it best.
Nobody's
earlier.
going to speculate from that dais.
Yeah, I'm not great at speculating or, yeah.
Hold on a second. You're using a word, mitigation. What is define mitigation for the people at home? Money?
Typically, when you see the traffic impact at an intersection and it goes to a certain level of service that becomes more like a failure, then the applicant is typically responsible to mitigate that and bring it back up to a certain level of service.
Right.
But if we're talking about greater impact than anticipated or greater impact than today, obviously signalization or widening of adjoining streets, that is not something that the school district is going to be doing. It's going to be the township, I'm assuming, correct? Or is there more impact on the project site itself?
That's usually a discussion that we have with the applicant and with the board to decide what their impact is and to try to figure out what is the best appropriate mitigation.
But David, now that you're speaking, wouldn't it be more intelligent to do the maximum mitigation now, enjoy the benefits now, and after we add the 100 students?
And that's one thing we're still looking at this report to determine what that mitigation is. With the missing data that we have right now, we cannot determine what that level of mitigation may need to be. We're still trying to figure that part out and to see what we can do.
For clarification, is 320 not a state road, and then is PennDOT not involved?
If mitigation is needed at 320, PennDOT would be involved. Right now, the issues that we're seeing are at the intersection of Bryn Mawr and Sproul, Clyde and Sproul, and also we're still looking at the need for the left turn, a possible left turn lane into the driveway and what that impact would be. Those are the three major things that we're looking at.
When you say sprawl, I'm saying that that's the same as 320. Yeah. So if you're saying that 320 is a state road and PennDOT's involved, then I would say Clyde and Sproul, PennDOT's involved.
That is correct. PennDOT will be involved if there's improvements at that intersection.
You know, for folks who are watching this sooner or later, who's the chairman of the group between PennDOT, Township, School Board? Who's the decider, if there is one? PennDOT?
First, it comes to the township as the first participant, and then it may go to PennDOT if things are needed at those intersections that are PennDOT roadways.
Any improvements to any state road or any improvements to any signal have to be approved by PennDOT at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter where it starts, who asked for it, who's going to pay for it. They have to approve it at the end of the day.
And Roger, these are another set of preconditions before they can start doing construction?
Not necessarily, and not all the time. PennDOT, it depends on, again, at the end of the day, how PennDOT decides to move forward with the permitting on the state road.
And so how does this hold up, going back to your earlier comment about deviating from the original plan to start breaking ground?
I'm sorry, how does?
Earlier on in your presentation, you had said what could hold up the school district from moving forward to starting the project that could delay the project.
So just remember, we're still only at preliminary. So we understand this still has to go through the entire final process. So we realize there are other steps for us to check off. There are outside agency approvals that we have to obtain that oftentimes final approval will be contingent upon obtaining outside agency approval, so we understand that. But, I mean, Dave, that's, we're only preliminary in front of the Planning Commission at this point. So, like, we're still kind of on go.
Well, I guess what I'm concerned about is like, how long did it take the project to be completed at the high school? That wasn't there some delays in getting that project going? I mean,
I'm looking to see if they know.
18 months.
You're going to have to come up here.
Yeah, it was originally 18 months, but then issues came up that it went a little bit longer with the contractor and some of the construction issues, but that was the initial intent, 18 months.
so I just look at it as a board, as a governing board of this township, and I'm just saying, as an individual, what could I do to help mitigate the risk to extend some of these delays? What can I do from a planning standpoint, knowing the experience I've had in working on some of these projects on the private sector in my earlier part of my career?
Right. So, we've come up with obviously an aggressive timeline to try and get online. And some of that, all of that falls on the district team to hit its requirements, to get what they need to get into the township, to work, to get to bid. They obviously have to, everything's a public bid. They've got to process those bids. It comes back through the school board. They vote. They present it to the community. So it's just a lengthy process in general. For us, we have to keep it moving. We've got to do a better job of giving you guys the right information to allow us to be successful. I mean, that's the bottom line. Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it with you, right? It's incumbent on us to help ourselves before we can ask you to help us. But here I am asking you to help us help ourselves.
What is the ask? I don't understand.
So the ask is for a recommendation of preliminary approval contingent upon our satisfaction of the Gilmore letter dated February 24th and the Gannett letter dated February 17th, with specific attention to continuing to working with Mr. Drummond and Mr. Norsini on the development of potential mitigation measures for these intersections.
But I'm hearing for the first time today that this school may increase capacity by 40% on roadways that are already congested. So I'm not sure, like I haven't even seen the study. I don't understand what the ask is.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add, so Mr. Falcone, actually let me back up. So I just want everybody to know the school district did give us a letter of support for a grant to replace the intersection equipment at Sproul and Clyde as it sits today. But as Mr. Drummond has noted, we don't know what the final configuration of that will look like. But to what Mr. Falcone had noted, there's one item that pointed to some dedicated turn lanes on Clyde Road. And what I thought may be a possible solution is, we know the total build out is, we'll say 650. And we have to assume that if it's built for that, that's what will occupy it. That's what we do from a sewer standpoint. That's what we do from a traffic standpoint. But we know that could be over time. So on the Clyde Road item, we were trying to discuss if the board would be acceptable, our Board of Commissioners, if we said, hey, when the student population hits X, now the school district has to kick in and start to do their work on the turn lanes on Clyde. And I think that's what Mr. Falcone is talking about, whether it be Sproul and Bryn Mawr. And to Mr. Wu, to Wu's point, I understand the traffic there. That's just bad all around. And I'm just going to use numbers. If the student population increases by 100, what does that do to traffic? Do the levels of the intersections fail? If they don't, and I don't know if they do or don't, maybe then that's a tipping point for when the next, we would rely on the school district and their demographers to say, okay, we've hit the 100. Now we think that, in the next 3 years, we're going to max out here at Ithan. that gives time for us, particularly them, to then work on those mitigation items. So the ordinance says that they have to come up with how to solve these problems. It doesn't say who pays for it and all that. I don't even know if that's acceptable to Mr. Drummond to keep this moving along because there's so much unknowns. But that's the stepped approach that we were talking about with the school district in theory.
And I should note, so this is, the traffic impact study has been in from the initial submission, and that did contemplate 750. So really what we're talking about right now is when those counts, when we collect the data for that peak hour. But we did always contemplate worst case scenario when we submit.
Should.
Yeah, right. So that part of our initial traffic study that was submitted, that is not what is kind of missing now. The missing data piece is what is the peak hour? Is that right, Damon? Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
With the peak hour, we're also looking at the site generation or the trip generation during that peak hour for the school,
Right.
which is different than the commuter peak hour.
That's right. So what we did was we found what we believed to be the peak hour for the intersection, which would be its kind of most dense. And our hour, I mean, the school gets out at 3:40. That is not the peak hour at Bryn Mawr Avenue and 320. Like, you might be a half an hour outside of that as the total peak. So what we're doing is evaluating when we infuse our traffic into that number, does that do anything different to the analysis?
So to clarify, in the letter from Mr. Drummond, it indicates here that the proposed development will generate 111 new peak hour trips during the AM peak and 24 peak hour trips during the PM peak. This is based on max capacity of expansion. The AM peak we're aligned on. It's the same AM peak. The revised study is not going to look at a different morning peak hour. Is that correct?
That's correct. AM peak is pretty much aligned with the school peak.
Okay. And the PM peak of 24 additional peak hour trips, that's because we're looking at potentially the wrong time slot for the PM peak.
That is correct. That's looking at the commuter peak, not the actual school peak at that point.
Okay. And then in terms of mitigation, obviously there's the Clyde Road and Sproul Road and Bryn Mawr Avenue. I grew up in that area and family had a house there for 20-some years. It is terrible. It's always been terrible. You just kind of have to plan around it. But what about mitigation from the school district that's more within your control around criteria for students that are riding the bus to school or not, and what distance they live from the school, or conditions at the exit from the Ethan Elementary School property that kind of hold some of the traffic on site until it's sort of more readily able to exit onto Clyde and Sproul Road. Have any of those things been considered?
Yeah.
Hi, Dan Bechtold, Assistant Superintendent for the Radnor Township School District. We have looked at that. We've actually looked at an analysis of how many students ride the bus versus how many are driven by their parents. So approximately 70% of our students ride the bus, and 30% of our students are dropped off by their parents. So if we're looking at 100 students that are going to be added to this, a school bus seats 48 students for middle school and high school students. Elementary students were able to get 3 to a seat, which is what we currently sit them at, so we're able to get 72. When we went through the analysis, we anticipated 1 to 2 buses if we would add 100, and approximately 30 parents that would be added as far as driving their cars. So we have looked at how we can, what the impact would be and how we could address this with our community.
Thanks. And the current criteria, it's based on sort of how far you live from the school, whether you're on a bus route or not. Is that right?
So we have community schools, and we provide transportation for any parents that sign up in the community. So within the Ethan boundary, any parent can sign up, and our transportation department will go and run routes to efficiently get the students to Ethan. We do the same thing at Radnor Elementary School and the same thing at Wayne. You know, one of the distinct benefits of this building is that If you have students in other buildings, we have heard from community members about overcrowding both in Wayne and in Radnor Elementary School. So while we're talking about 100 additional students coming to the new Ithan Elementary School, we believe this will also improve traffic throughout the rest of the community because we're looking at the potential of moving people that are closer to Ithan Elementary School to improve traffic throughout the entire Radnor Township.
Thanks. So then, if we go to 150 new students and we get the right PM peak hour slot, it's 1 to 2 more buses at that hour, and it's 30 parents picking up their kids if we stay at a 70-30 split.
Yeah, so we're anticipating 100 students. So we're at 544. We're anticipating about 650 is where we're looking at to cap. One of the things I'll say about Radnor is when PDE calculates building capacity, Radnor has always had pride in having reduced class sizes. So if you're going to go and you're going to look at Upper Darby, or you're looking at Downingtown, you're looking at other school districts outside, most school districts have higher class sizes than Radnor. Radnor's really prioritized keeping our class sizes small. So when we look at a PDE capacity of a building at 750, that's not a Radnor capacity. If you would look at Wayne Elementary School or Radnor Elementary School, the PDE capacity would be significantly higher than what we actually staff it with because we don't jam as many kids as we can in a classroom.
Gotcha. Thanks. To kind of make my point, I guess, in summary, the answer here seems to be that we need more kids to be riding the bus, and bad traffic will probably promote more parents to take that route again instead of driving a car. I mean, that's the only real way in my mind that the population at Ithan and the roads that are confined the way they are around there actually see reduced car traffic. You know, we can add another left turn lane, we can add another traffic signal. It'll help to some degree, I suppose. It's for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon, and everyone else is still driving to and from work. And so, you know, my view is that I think the missing information on the revised traffic study with respect to kind of preliminary approval is relatively immaterial, and other solutions will be assessed and discussed and proposed along the way here. But I mean, personally, knowing the area very well, I don't have a concern that another 100 students there is going to make or break the current traffic situation at that intersection.
Mr. Bechtold, with respect to these 100 extra students that we're contemplating on getting, is that instantaneous? Are we redistricting existing students from, let's say, Radnor Elementary back to Ithan?
It is not. It is not. So we are planning to be thoughtful in our rollout. Again, we are multiple years away from actually having a completed school, but it is not something that the district is looking to immediately redistrict and have 100 students start day one.
So in theory, it could be 0.
In theory, we could have 544 students on day one. We want to be thoughtful about a rollout. When you talk about redistricting, and our superintendent, Dr. Batchelor, has talked about this in numerous public meetings as we began engaging the community about this, you know, that is something that he has said, like, we are looking at the options of redistricting. You know, we do not have, you know, plans for day one to redistrict. I think that it is something that we have realized that at Radnor Elementary School, we have students that use rooms that were not necessarily intended to be classrooms, that they, you know, that building, when we had the tri-party agreement it was built, the number of students that are in there right now is more than we anticipated when the building was built, and that happened shortly after the building was built. Do we see an opportunity to go and right-size our buildings and make it make sense for students across the district? Yes, we do, but I don't anticipate on day one we're going to have 650 students in Ithan Elementary School.
I know I've been very unsuccessful in getting anybody to speculate anything today, but I'm going to ask a different question. Is it possible that the district could wait on increasing capacity up to the limit of 650 or even 750 students, pending perhaps some of the traffic mitigation improvements, depending on what we see in the traffic study.
I think that
Is that logical?
that is very logical. I anticipate that the traffic determinations will be done well before that, because we're talking about multiple years before we would even occupy. When we did the presentation at the last meeting, we're looking at, if we stay on our timeline, the building will be completed in the spring of 2027. We would have the entire summer to demo, so that way we could go and move things over, demo, and then the students would start in the fall of 2027. So yes, that would make sense.
And then you could potentially stage, with the agreement of the township, stage any traffic improvements thereafter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Question for staff, I guess. In regards to, we're talking about 30 extra cars and a couple extra buses, and we talk about 3:40 in the afternoon, which I don't look at my watch, but the 320 southbound crawl, I feel like it's in pretty high effect by 3:40. Do we look at the other intersections? Like if I'm coming out of Ithan at that time, I'm like, how do I get over to Ithan and down to Brent? Like, I'm going to pick a different route to not get out to 320. And how is that going to impact those other side streets? Maybe not in that exact.
So we do set up a study area with the applicant to start with, and that's usually the intersections that are immediate vicinity of the school. Those are the ones that we want to look at. Determining too far out, the traffic does usually disperse as you get further out, which helps. But we do hold them to a certain number of just intersections that are close by.
So this data point is at a different time than the normal peak time, which means, I mean, if you're doing all your data at normal peak time, isn't that showing more traffic? So by shifting it, you're going to show less traffic.
It's showing.
Sorry. Typically, what you're looking at during the commuter peak time, which is like 4 to 6, is the commuter traffic that may just be on Sproul. It's going to be a higher volume there. When you're looking at the school peak, you're going to see a lot more traffic coming out on Clyde and looking at turning movements and making sure the intersection is going to work from that perspective. Did that answer your question, or? Yeah.
I mean, I think.
Wouldn't you calculate it at the worst peak time?
So I think the worst time at Sproul and Bryn Mawr is not going to be when the school district lets out. That's not going to be the worst for that intersection, but I think the worst for the Clyde and, what's the road into Ithan called? School Lane or something? The turn on to Clyde, to Damon's point, our traffic generating there is going to be significantly higher when we let out, which has nothing to do with the commuter peak, because we're the only ones generating traffic at that time. And I think we're trying to get the data right. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Stephen. I think that there are instances where we've studied the worst case scenario, but it's maybe not the most impacted by our development. And so I think Damon wants to see all the data so that he can really identify where we're making things worse and when.
So that brings us back to the question, when are we going to get that study?
So I would like to bring the traffic engineer up yet.
And while she's coming up, I'll also address the other issue you were just talking about. During the commuter peak, your traffic from the school is a lot less. At that point, you may only have staff coming out, where the other peak hour that we want to look at is when the students are coming out and the parents are coming out.
Hi, Michelle Madslin, ELA Group.
Okay.
The data points that we're all talking about, I needed to get new traffic count data, and I now have that. I just recently got it. So for me to do the additional analysis for this school peak, I can do that now.
So when is that going to be ready?
I could have it ready shortly.
I mean, like tomorrow, a week, a month?
This week, next week, something short.
Okay, so you can get that traffic study in the next couple of days?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's other items, I think, on the Gilmore letter that are open. I think there was like is there a missing sketch?
There are several items that I did address on this letter that I just provided a kind of an updated traffic study today to Damon, and I'm not sure he had a chance because it was such a short time.
Just looking, I think on Gilmore letter, page 3, D, there's executive summary, inconsistencies. E, there's a sketch missing. F, there's inconsistencies. And then going back up to B.
And
is
yes,
the
I
traffic
have
study.
addressed those items.
Those are all addressed.
Yes.
And the traffic study will be done this week.
Yes.
Okay. So Damon,
Yeah, we have not had a chance to review that. We did get that in today to address, or they sent that in today to address some of those comments, but we have not had a chance to review it.
okay, do you have an opinion as to how we should handle the traffic study that's not here that will supposedly be done this week?
Typically, I would, typically, I would like to see this.
Not typically. I know,
Yeah.
I know it's not.
During preliminary review, it's typically when we would see what mitigation needs to be done
Yeah.
and what improvements need to be done to any intersections.
Is that
That's-
something that we really shouldn't proceed on until you get that and can make that determination?
I would leave that to this board.
Can I ask the solicitor, if we were to uncover something in the traffic study after preliminary approval, prior to final approval, is there anything that prohibits us from conditioning final approval on the necessary mitigation factors identified?
I'm going to continue the string of not trying to predict the future. It really depends. It depends on how the preliminary plan approval is structured as granted by the board. It depends on what exactly is found in the traffic study. And what our ordinances require. There's just too many variables there for me to, specifically answer that question. Could it happen? Yes, but at the same time, we could be locked into a preliminary plan approval where we really can't, unless the applicant is willing to do something voluntarily, we can't move off of.
So, Mr. Solicitor, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now, are we advised that this isn't something that we should preliminarily approve until you get that information?
Well, no, I think because this board or this commission is only making recommendations. And I think, based on what's being presented here, this information is going to be provided to the township prior to the Board of Commissioners actually making an approval or a denial of this plan. So, it's up to you on how you want to act on this, but it's not something that's, you're not required to table this for another month because this information is lacking at this point in time.
Mr. Drummond, just to clarify, if enrollment does not increase, it stays at 543, is there impact?
There would not be impact in that case because you're basically dealing with existing conditions at that point.
Okay.
It would
So no
operate same
mitigation
as
would be
today.
required?
That would be correct.
Okay. And in that eventuality, if we're not comfortable with the ambiguities, we could make a recommendation that the school, until traffic study is satisfactory to the township, not redistrict additional students to the school or increase enrollment beyond 543? Is that whatever that number is. I know I'm diving into the weeds,
No,
but.
I don't,
But they're not saying they're not going to do the mitigation. It's just what level of mitigation.
Correct, but.
And go ahead.
but if, I mean.
But I don't want to lock into an open-ended,
I don't.
I don't think, no, I mean, I think you have a pretty serious group. We have our own engineers, and their goal is to make sure it works. It doesn't serve them to have it not work. And I think I would rather not see them held up, because I understand the impact of 1 month. It doesn't sound like much, but on a project timeline, 1 month can be deadly.
I don't disagree.
No, and because there's gonna, like 100 other things we don't know about that's gonna hold them up. So I think we should keep them moving. I think there's a concerted effort here to make sure that it gets done properly.
Sure, and I think there's a concerted effort on this board to try to keep this thing moving as well, but at the same time, we want to apply same or similar standards that we would on any other project of this magnitude, which would normally require us to say, no, we're going to table you until we have all the data. We're trying to work around that.
But also, aren't we in a situation where if they don't have the data in 2 weeks, that they're going to be dead in the water anyway? So I think they've told us that they're taking that burden on themselves. They're asking us to let them take that burden on. I say, let's let them have the burden.
I would say that I'm conflicted because I think that I'm on MJ's side, that just because they've got a deadline shouldn't make us acquiesce to what they're looking for, because we're going to mess up their project that wasn't our project, it was their project.
I think
By the
this-
same- huh?
I'm sorry, no,
It is our
the shift
project.
was changing the data point.
Right.
They
But
had
by-
their work done.
Right.
They said they changed the data point.
Hey,
And-
you
and
know,
I don't-
just for a
and-
second here, it is our project. It's Radnor's project. It's our taxes, which are predominantly school taxes. They're going to be
But we're not on the
impacted.
school board. We
But-
need to litigate differently
Well,
than the school board.
we're advisory too, that's also, but I'm leaning with Stephen here that we should keep it moving.
Agree, which I think, based on the explanation provided earlier, just means that our recommendation to the board should have proper terminology in it that reserves the right to address these traffic study findings at final approval and by the board. If we recommend preliminary approval subject to resolution of these 2 letters and producing the traffic study prior to the Board of Commissioner meeting, and that the approval should be conditioned on satisfactory mitigation of traffic findings, then we can keep moving and we'll be back here for final.
I would agree. I think we should keep this process moving. I go back to my earlier comment I made. My biggest concern, and this is something I wanted to speak to Dave about, is that the biggest concern I have is about the delay, in which the biggest shock I heard is about you expect that, or someone made the comment about someone expects that the school to be open the summer of 2027. That's what, 2 years, 2.5 years away from now? There's a lot of work to be done in order to start moving dirt. So, knowing what I know about what it takes to get these projects going, I just think there's a lot of risk, and I'm not sure with everyone, if anyone reads the newspapers, what's going on with our neighbors up north. The cost of lumber is going to go up through the roof right now with the new tariffs. So I just know what the construction costs. Forget about the delays and what that may mean from the cost of our construction our costs is going to go up because of delays, but the cost of materials are going to go up significantly. And Stephen, you probably know better than I do what that means. So I think Skip, you made the comment, or someone made the comment just on the board. I'm wearing 2 hats here. I live in the township, or Skip, you said it, and as well as my kids go to the school, and now I'm a taxpayer here because my kids, and we all pay school taxes here. So yeah, We're wearing both hats here.
I don't think,
But can I just finish here
Yeah,
before
sure,
I
of
lose
course.
my chain of thought here? So I think, I'm of the opinion, I want to keep this process going. And I agree with you. I think we approve, subject to the satisfaction that the reports are complete, the data's complete, and we get this thing going. The only thing I ask, Dave, is that you keep us in line. We have some sort of an idea what we need to do, spoon feed us exactly what we need to be doing, at least on our end, and maybe the same thing with the approval for the BOC, what needs to be done with them, that we could keep feeding them and keep feeding them in order to get all the approvals that's needed in order to start moving the dirt. Because God forbid is that we get into a delay where we're 2 years, 3 years behind schedule, which I think that this could that could be a reality. Because there's a lot of approvals that could be needed, particularly now that we need with 320, that we're going to need the DOT that's going to be involved now.
So going back to what I think you said, you should help us help you.
We've got to do a better job.
So as we go through the next stage, let's try not to be at this point
Oh my gosh.
the next go-round. You know, get things cleaned up, do it timely, avoid this type of stuff so we don't find ourselves, because the next go-round, it'll make it even.
Impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've got to do a better job, for sure.
So with that, can I have a motion? Maybe Commissioner Dow?
I'll try. Let's see. Oh. Pull this up here.
If it helps, I
Motion
can
for-
give you the application number.
Yeah, I just pulled it up here. Motion for application 212981, Radnor School District, Ithan Elementary Land Development Preliminary Approval. Make a motion to recommend preliminary approval subject to resolution of the Gannett Fleming review letter findings dated 2/17/25, the Gilmore and Associates review letter findings dated 2/24/2025, completion of the revised traffic study prior to Board of Commissioner review, and final approval subject to satisfactory mitigation of traffic findings as deemed appropriate by the staff.
I'll second that.
Second by Nat? Oh, second by Varenhorst? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that is a all in favor with the exception of Commissioner Wu. Is that correct?
It's okay, I'll just change my.
I'm sorry, sorry, Commissioner Kim. He started it with Commissioner Kim. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a nay. I'm a nay.
I'm sorry, did I make that clear? Commissioner Kim is a nay. Okay, the next commission meeting is April 7th, 2025. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.